with that were positive,
Right.
and
Right.
also the Netherlands that was doing testing for
Right.
things. But the thing is we're trying to figure out like what are the triggers? Is it WHO? You have to get to like an outbreak, a public health emergency, like what criteria would warrant for a new pathogen requesting the code systems? Because we were talking with John, and this is something I learned is SNOMED is expecting somebody to submit to them what they need. And that didn't happen this time, per requests. And then and also like official names and clinical terms. And I understand, that might be WHO, it could be CDC, it could be a combination depending on, the situation. And then for Loink, they're pretty responsive of stuff, but
Hmm.
they also had some similar outreach. And we actually did reach out to some people in laboratory systems, and they were asking us when the codes are available, let them know, which
Hmm.
was the opposite I was expecting because I don't think a layperson like myself should be the initiator, but that's what happened and that's why we're trying to ask and figure out, what should be the criteria,
Hmm.
for the
So
next pathogen.
you would like a stable structure and algorithm so that this happens routinely.
And it's not
Yes.
people
Well,
specific.
not missed.
Right.
Yeah, it's not people specific. Oh, because I
Yeah.
know so and so usually works on this, I'll send them an email and
Right.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah, so
I can ask that question because we do have an internal group that meets at CDC. I can ask that question.
that'd be
Um,
great.
Yeah.
a lot of people are like on AL, So yeah. And we're 2,500 people down or maybe more, right? So
Right.
I yeah.
Well, then if we
Um
need to punt to Canada or some other country, we can do that too because we were working with them too because they had more information about
right,
the testing that we were initially able to find.
right.
There's subsequent things that, we've been kind of sharing because for Livid, Christina and Ricky and others are
Hmm.
working on that. But and again, like Ricky said, if it initiates in another country, it may not even be the US,
Hmm.
but and when
We
we work
certainly
with,
want to coordinate with we would like an algorithm and a standardization.
Hmm.
yeah. And it might not be like, one set of like, I don't want to say rigid rules. It may be okay if one or two countries start getting, cases of something, and depending on what it is, and there might be different criteria and that might be applicable too. I don't know. You guys are the experts.
Mm. Well, I will definitely, the next meeting we have of the CDC group that works on coding, I will definitely put that on the agenda. Um, and I think that uh, Manjula is still out.
Yeah. Yeah, he's
And
out.
and he actually sets up the meetings. So,
Okay.
yeah.
That's okay. I
So,
mean, it's not urgent, but it's just like for the next
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, it was just something that we noticed with this one.
Hmm.
yeah.
And
Well, now
I
we
mean
have,
it coincided with, me not being in the
right,
office because I was on vacation. So,
right,
otherwise I might have initiated something, I don't know.
right,
So, but it shouldn't be people specific, right?
right.
Right.
Absolutely.
So,
And that's actually a good test, Ricky, because when it's people specific like that, or with so many people that were HL7 in Rotterdam, just upriver from the Honda boat, um,
right.
you know, I mean, God forbid if, anything happened and they had some type of quarantine there, then you guys could have potentially been impacted. I mean, not like it's that, you know, critical, but at the same time, continuity planning for when people are out of office, because we know vacations happen, holidays happen, but we can't control the pathogen spreads
I
or
know.
when it emerges like that.
Y'all are making total sense.
Okay. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Standardization and algorithm, not people specific. Yep.
Yeah. And when I was at ASM for the micro meeting, I did go, they had a late breaking session on the hantavirus outbreak, and Colleen Kraft was explaining how the NETC works. And so I reached out or I talked to her after the meeting, and we just connected. She was out too for summer, so she just
Right.
answered my email yesterday. So
Yeah.
um, just make this a slow process. It'll
Right.
probably take quite a little bit, but keep chipping away at it like we
I
do with
know.
everything.
I'm not sure Colleen really knows anything about IT stuff, but I could be
No, but
wrong.
she knows processes and maybe, who to connect with, and, you know,
Okay.
I don't know. And
Yeah.
if she doesn't know more, maybe she knows somebody who does
Yeah.
eventually. So just
Yes.
trying
That's
different
how
avenues.
that's how we do it. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So that's this topic. The HPV will discuss later. That I had a question that came up on Carius testing. I don't know if you're familiar with Carius, but
Oh
they
yeah.
okay. So
Yeah.
so they actually, well, the Florida Department of Health shared the target list, Carius target list, with me, and I mapped all of it to the organism hierarchy concept codes, and there are like 93 that I couldn't find anything for. So, and the mapping is in here, so if anybody wants to look at it. Um, and I think I need to kind of chat with John though about, some of them are um, more like lineages and strain specific. So I don't know if he wants to put it in the US extension or if we should put it in our APHL extension. So I'll go look that up, and I can't type.
So there's
Um,
93 organisms that are not in the system. Is that what you're saying?
there are 93 organisms that don't have a SNOMED concept right now. Yeah,
Right. I bet they don't because they're not pathogens.
probably.
But that doesn't matter, right? Because there's still benign stuff and there's all kinds of like
Oh
mammalian
yeah.
flora and other things that are in the organism hierarchy. I
Yeah.
guess the
Uh-huh.
question, can you put the link in the chat? I'm just kind of curious, are they combinations at all? Because that's one reason why
No,
we
there are
should.
no combinations. And it's not a link. It's a spreadsheet, and it's in the minutes.
Well, not only, Andrea, are they not pathogens, they're not human colonizers.
No,
I
but
hate,
Snowbet has things from animals and so does Loink. So,
well, I'm sure they do. I just think that's probably why they're not there. But
that
Probably.
well,
might be why. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the loin coat they're currently using is a ordinal code, which is this one. They're using this microorganism of interest sequence presence and specimen. So we could, they would need a new loin code with a nominal scale, or there is one that says metagenomic DNA and RNA sequencing, which is what they're doing. Um,
yeah.
but it is on CSF. So I don't, and their lists of organisms they have for the cell-free plasma versus the bronchialveolar lavage, which are their two specimen types that they shared their target list with, are different. So I don't know um, if they want two loin codes or not. So I'm chatting with the health department on that, and we'll bring this back when I have a little more input. But I wanted to share
Okay.
how far
Yeah.
I got on that one. Um, so then we can go talk more about the uh, blood cultures and NHSN. And
Mhm.
we did start a blood culture thing. Is this down here? No. Uh, so let me pull that up. Uh, or do you have more? Do you have more than what I have, Andrea? Do you want to share your screen, or do you want me to pull up what you shared with me last time?
Sorry, I had an email I was looking at. For which one?
The blood culture panel diagram, did you want?
I let me give me a second here.
I mean, I have what you sent me last time. If that's the
That's like
status you have,
that's a
I can
shortened
pull it up.
version. I have the longer version I shared last time when we recorded it.
Okay. All right. I will stop sharing. Stop sharing.
Okay.
Where's my share button? Stop sharing. Uh,
Let me share them. Okay, able to see. Are you able to see?
Yes.
Hang on.
Okay.
I am now. Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Yes.
just want
Yes.
to make sure before I start talking. So we were talking about kind of some basic workflow and just Nancy for background. This is kind of developed for some discussions that are going on also within HL7 clinical orders workflow, other O&O type things as well. So it's kind of a general workflow, and if we need to make some updates, if people know specific aspects that might be different. One of the things with the HL7 diagram is it also had the item, the data element, the order of the results, whatever the piece of information is, both in V2 messaging, so the OBRs that you'll see, or the OBXs, and then also fire. So we have a structured report or SR and for the
That's a
order.
service request. That's
Or
our service
or
request.
sorry, service request. I don't know
Yeah.
why I said structure report. Brain
I
issues.
know.
But thank you, Ricky. But an observation for the result reporting, and then they end up in the diagnostic report. So generally, we'll have the clinician requisition request, the order, and the specific order test order name would be like blood culture or some variation of that from the EHR that would come over the interface or flow in the shared database to the performing laboratory. If they're using something like LOI, they would have an OBR1. And then if it's Fire, it would be service request, although we're not aware of any labs that can support Fire. So it might be someone sends in Fire and then somehow gets transformed back into V2 so the performing lab can actually receive the order. So that's kind of the starting point.
Hmm.
And feel free if there's a question or something just to have me stop and pause and we can. And so generally there might be the first order is like a culture for blood. Now, um, from an HL7 perspective, uh, this would not necessarily be in the LIS, but would be come out from exchanges that they would want an OBX or the observation and fire, because one of the challenges that they just recently worked on was how do you group everything in diagnostic report so it has the appropriate structure and clinical meaning? Because diagnostic report is kind of like a fruit basket, and so OBXs are kind of like the pieces of fruit that go in the fruit basket with no inherent meaning. And so currently there's a whole lot of people inventing how this should be structured, some which might be fine and some that might be semi problematic. So that's where we're going with this. So so for the order, there's a duplication here in an observation to support the diagnostic report for grouping what's part of the blood culture order. Does that make sense?
I think so. I
Okay.
think so, yes.
Okay. Um, and I put here too, like, if there's no growth, it might be no growth after 48 hours or 72 hours, or, if it's
Right.
48, depending on the protocol. So you
Hmm.
might have this like observation, but then, do you have another observation, one for the 24, one for the 72. So that's why I have it represented twice.
Uh-huh.
Whatever that free text is from laboratories. And if there's no growth, it might just go into the diagnostic report and be finalized, and that's that. However, since you brought up the total volume, we
Hmm.
are trying to figure out, as we're kind of talking about where in the workflow it might be. So once the order is received in the laboratory, is there a sub order for the total volume kind of panel that we were talking about potentially? And this is kind of flexible too if we need to update it or whatever. So maybe we have a sub order that automatically is generated, with the order, and it's built in the EHR and LAS. Because the other thing is a lot of these sub orders, whether they're ordered at the same time or like a reflex, like for sensitivities or that sort of thing, they need to be built in both the LIS and EHR so that the result items, the antibiotics, for example, or in this case, the different volumes, are all kind of nested under it from a grouping perspective, but also on the EHR. So when those results come back in the EHR, that EHR knows where to file them in the EHR and for, the use in the EHR database and in downstream systems.
So
So is that
this is going to be useful for lots more than just blood cultures then.
correct?
Yes. Okay, great.
I mean, we try to use this same type of, and this is just, I'm not an artist with all the, I'm just doing this in Word. So, those that have better tools can also try to replicate this. So we have so from the laboratory perspective, they would build something like, say, total volume of uh, bottle panel order or something similar. However, the naming would be. We could, oh, and I didn't mention, I put link here. I haven't added all the link codes in here, but I have added some of them. But this would be like an order link code for the panel order. And then it would also be duplicated in Fire using Fire observation. So it would be the same test name for the panel order, the same link code, and then the children or the results for each of these. We talked about maybe having one bottle for volume, bottle two, three, four, five, six. There's a couple different ways we can kind of structure that. And then I also heard you wanted total volume of all bottles. So let's say we have one and two, they can be added. So if this is like 10, 10, and the total volume is 20, then this total volume could be the trigger for some of the notes and comments that you indicated you'd like to have sent. But this would be one observation. And then for HL7 say as a group are true. So then we know that these observations are not orders, but these are results. And this one is not expected to have a value, or units or those types of things like a normal result would be, because there's been discussion of how do you determine the difference between an order and result, especially if something's named the same, so there's these characteristics from an HL7 perspective that are part of this grouping kind of decision. But so we'd have like say bottle one, if it's like 10 mLs, you'd have the volume as the term. It would be mapped to a new link code that would represent this, unless we're going to use existing link codes. And then the value would be 10, the units would be milliliters, and then the same thing whoever's looking at the volume could be a lab professional or someone in the specimen receiving or whoever's doing this. This could be 10 or 9.5 or whatever the case might be. And we may have like 19 or, the calculation that would be validated, according to lab accreditation and CLIA. And then those results, when they're available, they would be sent to the diagnostic report, of course, with the no growth results. But these would be kind of in a panel. So they would be grouped together. So, like it wouldn't go like no growth and then, bottle one, no growth after 72, so there'd be some structure there, if you will, in organization. So I just want to, and if this is all that we have, because I'm assuming you want the total volume, whether or not there's growth, right? Or,
We're- So where we would want the total volume is to alert the clinician that they need to draw more blood cultures. So we would want it when the um, specimen is accessioned and we realize, oh, wait a second, we only have 10 cc's. We want to be able to tell the clinician right away, hey, we got a suboptimal volume. This is what we got. Here's the comment, which is, please, evaluate your patient and order additional blood cultures if clinically indicated, etc. So it can't wait for 24 hours. It has to be able to be put into the report when or put into the um, specimen received uh, ASAP.
So let's talk about how that communication would occur. One pathway is to have it like we do for like the no growth, but even send it out immediately upon receipt and create a diagnostic report and have a preliminary report that's
Yeah,
immediate. I don't know anyone that does that. Um,
we did it
uh,
by hand
okay,
because,
but
yeah.
electronically, I don't know anyone that does that, and
Hmm.
so we'd have to make sure that there's capability and that labs can do that. I think
I don't,
theoretically you
I
could,
don't think
right?
that would qualify as a diagnostic report.
Exactly.
That's true too.
I think it would be an order update, like an order update message of some sort. So
Yeah,
it,
something.
in
We
V2, it
do
would be an order
we do
update
send
message.
some messages back when we have issues, but it wouldn't be a diagnostic report the way I would think of it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we could rule that out as an option then. I'm just kind of brainstorming here. The second item, kind of like Ricky said, and is that what you're talking about, the order update? Would that be at the lab communication, the IHE LCC workflow? Because there really isn't a great workflow for this currently. So that's what I'm trying to figure out. There's also a phone call or, other non-electronic means, but I think we're looking for electronic means, right?
Yeah. So we used to enter it into the specimen when we received it in the microbiology lab, and we weighed all the bottles and we got the volume. Then we put that into the computer. Hey, we have a comment, and we're recommending additional blood cultures if clinically indicated. But that had to happen when we got the blood cultures.
And was it sent on the order? You said it was on the specimen though. How did that get sent?
Well,
I
I
haven't
don't
encountered that in
know.
my
Th-
practice, so that's why I'm kind of
I
asking.
Right.
think I think
We
you were probably in within the same system, right? It was in the hospital and you were in the lab in the hospital.
right. And we had
So it was
Cerner.
the same system. So the system can have access to, the specimen status, and the specimen status would have then that comment. I mean, I've seen, yeah. Or
Yeah, because
any other comments on the specimen they could be able to, view. And so if there is a specimen update, um, you could set up the system to alert the provider to go look at it or something if it's
right,
all
because
internal, right? So,
we had another one, for instance, for hemolyzed specimens, where we needed
right.
to let them know right away, right, that the specimen was compromised. Exactly how we did that, I'm not sure, because I wasn't the IT person. I just said, hey, this is what I need to have happen, and they made it happen.
It's funny you say that, because another thing that HL7 is working on, especially since US CDI 6 came out about a week and a half ago, with specimen condition acceptability, is kind of what you're talking about is, you get a specimen in the lab, it's leaking, the tube
Hmm.
broke, you can't do the testing at all. So you wouldn't have
Right,
any of this from a workflow perspective. And then you probably cancel the order, but you would have the specimen condition. So whether it's, let's say it's a potassium, our example we've been using just to be consistent, is a potassium. It's hemolyzed, can't do any of the testing. So you request a reorder and redraw, you cancel the order, but you indicate kind of the reason for your cancellation is due to the specimen condition that it's, moderately or severely hemolyzed.
hmm. And
Um,
then the clinicians couldn't see that.
oh, really?
Yeah, at that point, they couldn't see it and they would be mad because the specimen got canceled.
Yeah, we,
Um,
we call too, but I mean, do you guys call too, I assume?
well, we did, but then getting that communication from the desk,
Right.
right, to the clinician was not easy. So, so you guys are working on that too, then.
Yeah, we're trying to
Yeah,
figure out how to communicate, how to deal with that in HL7. Um,
Because the other reason that it would be nice to have all of this documented is because then the lab could figure out where they're having their problems, right? They could run a search or a query and say, how
yeah.
many hemolyzed specimens do we get? Right? And if there's a lot of them and they come from one particular floor,
Right. And
you
there's
know?
education, right? That
Right,
so we're just trying to like meet the CLIA requirements. So you would classify the insufficient volume as more of a specimen condition, unacceptable specimen. So then the CLIA requirements would kick in, which is totally fine and I think
right.
a really good way and standardized. I was just mentioning right now. Is what that workflow looks like because when ONC when it got added into USCDI, I think a lot of people are thinking, oh, this is just on the diagnostic report. We'll just put in that, for a BMP because that's the other use case we've been using. We have a hemolyzed specimen, maybe it's mild hemolysis or moderate, and you're still not going to report out the potassium, but you're not going to cancel anything like
Right.
you would on the order for a single potassium. You would go to report out the rest of the BMP or, whatever panel it is, and then you would indicate that for like the BUN, the glucose, the other things, it was done on a hemolyzed specimen, but then you would at least in our practice at Duke, we would star out the potassium so you wouldn't have anything that could be reported there. And then we'd also have a comment like you might want to reorder and redraw the potassium if warranted. And then Kathy, you said it's test not performed. Did I get that right? I'm trying to remember that you have a little bit different nomenclature at LabCorp and how you do it, but it's essentially kind of the same thing. You don't
We
report out the
put
potassium.
TNP for test not performed.
Okay. So there's a couple different ways that people handle it.
And then we give more information about why it wasn't performed. The TNP
Right.
is what you see up in the.
In the value field, and then you have the comment. Because the other thing with this new criteria is um, there's capability well, in USCDI, it's supposed to be using SNOMED CT, and Ricky and everyone kind of, and Kathy, LabCorp submitted a lot of your reasons for specimen condition and reject reasons. And so there's SNOMED codes made for a number of those. But if you're doing a comment, the LIS has have functionality to add in a SNOMED code for those comments. It's usually free text. So whether it's
Yeah.
like on the order side or, the rejection for or specimen condition. So
And free text you can't really pull back out.
Right.
Um, so that's why it'd be nice to have coding. That's why NHSN would like to have coding, where you can pull that information back out.
yeah, it'll be very interesting to see because this new USCDI vendors can start using the new fields and functionality
Hmm.
as each vendor deems, starting August 25th, I believe is the date. So it'll be very interesting to see how each of them decide to implement and what they want to do and how to do it. Um, I I think we've been talking like potentially on making some recommendations either from Shield or HL7 to because we have no implementation guides for Fire for lab yet.
Yeah. I mean, this is once again where we need an algorithm standardization and
Yep.
everybody doing it the same way. Mm,
And I'll just
okay.
say one other thing too is because it's more on the hemolysis icteric and lipemia. And I mentioned this to Ricky, but there's a lot of IVD vendors now, the instruments. So we used to manually look at the tube and assess it by a human
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
then indicate it in the results. Now, when you do a BMP like Roche, Abbott, Siemens, there's others globally, they have a hemolysis icteric lipemia index.
Yeah. Hmm.
And those are reported automatically with those results. So in theory, you wouldn't have to add in the comment. It would come off the instrument. But then if you're link encoding lab results, that's not a SNOMED code per the USCDI. So someone would have to probably add the SNOMED code somewhere downstream, or I'm not quite sure how that would be done either. It's a little conundrum. Um,
Mm,
but that still is kind of work to kind of get ironed out. But for
right.
this one, so there's a comment of insufficient volume. We should probably make sure that there's the appropriate rejection reasons that are available so we can use that standardized text that you were talking about, Nancy.
Yeah, and we don't actually reject it. We still run it. We just say, hey, you know, there isn't a, there's not enough blood in here. You may get a false negative, right? Um, but we never reject blood cultures.
Okay.
Right. But you don't want to wait until you have a preliminary report
Right.
to
You don't
send
want to
that
wait.
note back. Yeah.
Right, because if people are ordering blood cultures, hopefully, the patient is sick enough to have blood cultures ordered and they
Right.
start antibiotics as soon
Right.
as possible, right? So we want to get the second two sets of blood before or at least at the beginning of their antibiotic treatment.
And Ricky, just one kind of aside, can you also add this to a scenario for the discussions within COW? And scenario 3 needs to be updated because it's non-plausible from Tuesday too, as an FYI in the minutes. But we should add this as one where you just have the condition only and it's not rejected. But the condition needs to be sent back immediately.
Yeah, that we haven't discussed that yet because that wasn't on our radar. Yeah.
I would
So,
actually,
so thank you, Nancy. This is good because to make sure that we capture this and make sure the HL7 can support it.
well, thank you for doing this because I think it looks beautiful, you know. I love
Um,
all the different colors and the
okay,
little arrows and
well, and this is the workflow from like kind of how it would happen in the laboratory.
mhm.
Not necessarily because the arrows will be reversed if you think about the fire dependencies and how HL7 fire would look at it.
So, but this would also work for tubes that have hemolysis that you aren't going to reject, right?
Oh,
Um,
yeah, and I haven't added those in specifically yet.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah, because here we wanted to look for at the blood culture explicitly
Right.
for, you know,
I'm just pleased that this workflow would also work for other specimens in the laboratory. Um, you know, where things happen where the specimen isn't the best specimen, where you want to alert the clinician that there may be an issue and what they can do. Um, so this is diagnostic stewardship being supported by the computer system, right?
yeah,
By IT.
that's the goal we're trying to work
Yeah,
towards. Yeah.
Yeah, and to be clear, this, immediately on the order is a little bit different scenario. Like I said, I didn't see it in my practice that was able to be done and supported electronically. There may or may not be capabilities exactly. It used to be like the phone call and things, and then you just put in a note or comment. Now for the specimen reject or not reject reason, but for condition, when you're reporting things out. So if it's something you know, maybe you think there's contamination, after growth has
right,
occurred and it's in the diagnostic report and you want to say, possible skin flora contamination, for
right.
example. Um, then that would go on the diagnostic report and that's something that yeah, for US CDI, we would expect that that would also be supported because we want to make sure that clinicians have that information for their decision making.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah, but I
Yeah,
think well, while it's not maybe explicitly in the lab class, there are clinical notes or something in USCDI. So comments, I think, but maybe result comment is something we should, you know, um,
Well,
push
is
for.
there
I consider them a lab result, right? Because if you're putting like say you're putting something on like say, well, it wouldn't be on this one. I could show you more about the rest of the workflow for growth and things like that. If there is growth, whether you put it, on this top level blood culture that you might have contamination, like your final interpretation of the organisms, um, that's considered a lab result that's been required to be supported for some time now in USCDI because it's one of the first things that was in
Oh,
there.
I thought you were talking about a comment on that result.
Well, that's part of the result, right? Are you
Well,
saying that it shouldn't be, it's not supported right now? Is that what you're saying?
it's not explicitly called out in USCDI. I mean, everybody is supporting it because it's, been around long enough in V2 that people do understand it and support it and um, things like that.
Do we
But
need to make an
it's
explicit
not
film?
explicitly called out in USCDI.
Do, see, I interpreted it was, and this is the issue with USCDI. There's insufficient detail that different people can interpret things differently, and that's what we're seeing.
Well, I guess, I mean,
Because each vendor can determine that's what we're seeing with some of the orders when Epic is like, we're making these all procedures, including the CBC, which in HL7 we're like, no, 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 no.
right. But
We can put that in the parking lot. I mean, we don't have to solve it right now, but
Yeah. Okay.
but I think it's something that we should maybe, add to our shield discussions. And if we need to make some more explicit comments that, are under, so it's in the ONC public comments, so vendors and developers see that, that might be a good idea. Or APHL or whoever wants to make comments,
Mm-hmm.
just to make sure that it's clear.
Yeah, I
So
added a note.
okay, thanks. So the above, any other questions on the above? Because I'm going to go down to like if something does grow.
Okay, no, you have extra stuff in here and it looks like you've typed in. So, okay, yeah, let's go to the next one.
And I haven't like updated this because I gave like basically the version I sent out with the email was the top half from last week's discussion.
Right, because I
Uh,
looked for the second half and couldn't find it.
I didn't because it was kind of like still a little flexible, and so I just want to
Okay,
in case we need to add more notes or updates. So for
okay.
growth, then there's going to be reflexive order. Was there a question?
No, sorry. My phone told me it's time to start breakfast.
That's not an order we can handle. If growth, then there's reflexive orders for the ID and susceptibility. And so BU Mirio actually had a blood culture webinar like within the last week or two. So I need to look at the recording because I joined late and so I missed part of this. But basically, and this is I'm trying to have a plausible scenario that's a real world example. Um, and so I kind of started working on this, and I'm happy to make updates to organisms or morphology or antibiotics. But generally, there's protocols. Usually, if there's something that is triggered on a blood culture bottle by the instrument that there's growth, a gram stain is done. I think to your point, Nancy, to make sure that whatever antibiotics are in progress or need to be started, that they know if it's gram positive, gram negative. And so you might have an order again. Oh, so this would be the third one, OBR3, an observation for the grouping of the organisms under this gram stain or the morphologies, I should say. And it might be organism one, organism two. And I just put here that kind of the response values would be gram positive cocci clusters and gram negative rods. If that, I try to keep it as simple, just a two. But if there's more things that people know are reported here, feel free to let me know. We can kind of add in some more results. But that would be another kind of grouping of like an order and the results.
Can you make extra boxes if you want? And this is just an example, or I mean, because like there could be gram variable. You could have a mixed culture.
Yep.
Um, so they would have to have some leeway, I think.
Yeah, this isn't like set. This is just supposed to be like what
Hmm.
could happen on a routine basis.
Right.
But thank you. Um, and then okay, once you have two isolates here, let's say one and two, then there's usually an order, again, reflex for MALDI-TOF or some other organism ID, whether it's manual or automated. I just put MALDI-TOF in so I could use kind of the link code that's consistent with that if it's something like BMiri or one of the other vendors like Brooker. But again, we'd have our fourth order, um, and then the order as an observation for the organism ID. This is where it kind of gets kind of interesting with. So we have one organism, let's say it would be Staph aureus, which would be like the gram positive one that gets identified. So I have identification here in a link code. So I kind of have this dotted line because there has to be this connection which susceptibility panel is to which organism.
Hmm.
Um, and I know there's like some workflows and linkages, but from a HL7 perspective, when this is coming out of the LAS, there'd be a reflex gram-positive susceptibility panel. And I'm calling this an invisible panel. And the reason is because it's added in the LAS, it's visible in the LAS. You have a build of the results that are part of that panel, which antibiotics. But for micro, this is not released outside the LAS, even though public health wants it.
Yeah.
EHR vendors, and it's not just any one, it's like pretty much uniform across the board is they suppress it, is what Epic calls it. So it's not exchanged external. So in that case, I kind of have a little bit different colored red for the order. The link code, none of this would be, exchanged. But the interesting thing, Ricky, will have to figure out is, will Epic be able to create the observation here for it and release it for use in diagnostic report for grouping? Because if they're not doing that, then how is this going to get originated? So that's kind of an outstanding question I have with HL7 says, this is the structure that should be used now for grouping. But if the LIS or EHR doesn't support this item, then it's hard to create something out of nothing. So that'll be like a parking lot item.
Hmm.
Let's just say it's V2. Okay, so we know this is an LIS for sure. Um, it may or not be released in V2, but there has to
In
be an
V2, they create it because in V2 the linkage between the organism and the results that are related to that organism is through an order, so it's through an OBR. And so in V2, they have to create that susceptibility panel as an order unless they order each individual antibiotic that's being tested, um, create that as an order.
Yeah, and they're
So
generally not orderable. They're only results.
exactly. So
At
in
least that's what
V2,
I've
they're
seen.
already solving that problem at least by, creating that OBR. But that's why, you know, a lot of EHRs, vendors can support this for susceptibility testing because it's been, a requirement for a very long time in V2, but they can't do something similar for non-antibiotic testing because they use a different module, right? They created a whole different module to be able to support this. And so now they can't
Like
do
PCR.
it. Yeah,
Okay.
they can do it there. So
Yeah,
um,
and I think they should be kind of the same type of structure ideally.
yeah, they should be
Um,
for PCR reflex. It should be the same, but it's not. They often can't support that.
um, so I'll come back and fix that later. But yeah, um, I'll just put a question mark there. But yeah, that's what I'd like to see because I mean, in the LIS, you can build this as a panel, and then you have, what's part of this panel. These, whatever the antibiotic combination is, these often correspond to the vendor. Like, so BU might be a gram-positive card that you have that has anywhere from 3 to 12 different antibiotics. Brucker could have something different or another vendor. And I just pulled a couple oxacillin, vancomycin, and I, just kind of putting in some results like resistance or susceptible just to, as a, so folks kind of get an idea. But again, it's the same. We need this for a grouper and then the results that are part of that and the values. And the other thing we know is with CLSI, there's two different ways that susceptibility panels are reported. Some are just using the straight qualifier um, for or qualitative resistant susceptible, and that's it. In other cases, the value would be like the MIC, which is like 1.4 millimeters, and then the interpretation is resistant. So um, that is kind of dictated by CLSI because we've talked about that in Shield. Like, can we standardize that? And basically, from what I can tell from CLSI, we can't. Both ways need to be supported for reporting purposes to meet CLSI requirements. And then structurally, then we have the gram negative panel, which is the same kind of approach. And then this serves to keep the groupings of the gram negative antibiotics so that they stay in their appropriate panel in the diagnostic report. Um, what's not clear to me is this kind of dash line, how that's going to be supported to linking to the organism. Is it coming from the top level order this way and then because normally you're adding an order for reflex onto the orders using surface request. Um,
Yeah,
so
in fire, I'm not entirely sure either. I think in Germany and their IG, they've used triggered by as the grouper, but
I,
I don't know. I mean, that's what we need to, you know, iron out
right.
in so this next fire ballot is where we need to make all those comments and put these examples in.
The other thing is if you have LIMS examples or LIS examples, from, Kathy or, Ricky from any of your APHL labs or Nancy or anyone, feel free, because we want to make sure it's aligned with how it's structured in the LIS to get it out into exchanges. Um, because not everything might be going into Fire, it might be V2, it might be just the internal database, and then at some later point, the EHR, someone might be trying to send this to public health because most of this is completed by the laboratory where the LAS vendor is the same as the EHR vendor, and there's a shared database. It kind of flows these items that are built in the EHR or LIS. They're in the internal database, and then downstream in the public health reporting modules where these get pulled in, whether it's for um, fire, for for electronic case reporting, health associated infection reporting, uh, ELR for laboratory reporting to public health. And then now with these quality measures, it would be pulled into those, the quality reporting module after it's been completed by the laboratory. So, and then, so that's one thing we probably want to discuss too, Nancy, is you have your fire implementation guide. Is it taking these elements and data elements as is? Or is there some transformation that needs to occur in the EHR so it can meet your reporting requirements? And I haven't gone through and looked at susceptibilities and some of the things, but for quality measure, like say for healthcare associated infection reporting,
Hmm.
let's just say it's a vanc resistant enterococcus, a VRE, a Visa, a MRSA, any of those organisms that are pre-coordinated kind of pathogens.
Hmm.
This is how it's coming out of the clinical laboratory and the discrete with the LOINC codes, and then the organism would have, I should put the SNOMED code for the organism here. Um, so you have different code systems. There's different pieces that kind of go together for the complete meaning in a
Hmm.
post-coordinated approach. HAI has a couple of organisms that use a pre-coordinated SNOMED code. So like it could be Visa versa, MRSA. Trying to think what are the other ones. There's a couple of them that are part of the HAI reporting. And so what happens is the EHR vendors takes this information that's coming in. It's like, oh, I have an E. coli in a patient, or let's say it's the Staph aureus if it's a MRSA, or well, MRSA's not really. Let's say it's the vanc resistant strep or staph or
Hmm.
whatever. It takes that combination coming in from the LAS and it remaps the organism to the pre-coordinated organism code so
Hmm.
that then when they're sending out their outbound interface for HAI, it has the right codes expected for HAI reported, so they're compliant there. So I
Yeah,
don't know what similar approach is needed for anything coming out of laboratory LISs.
just
Um,
just a heads up, we're 3 minutes over.
oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Oh, I didn't see the time. Thanks.
It's all right. Can you send me this so I can put in the minutes and I will cancel next week's call. I will send out an email about the call after that, and we will definitely pick this up on a future call. Thanks for pulling
And
this together.
Andrea, can I
Yeah.
send this to our folks in NHSN and just say it's a rough draft, but I want them to know that we're working on it?
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to make sure it's not like set in stone or anything, because if there's some things that we need to make some
Oh,
adjustments,
yeah.
but yeah,
Yeah, this is a draft. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I
definitely.
mean, I would just say close hold, draft, want you to know that we're working on it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your work, Andrea.
Sure.
Yep. Awesome. Talk to you
Okay.
guys in 3 weeks for me.
Yes,
Okay.
enjoy.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.